Olivia thought peace had finally settled into her life. She was respected as the head of JJ Jet Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul International, Lagos branch, the biggest branch in Africa. She had her loving husband Jerry, their beautiful son Jonathan, and the unwavering support of Andrew, the billionaire whose faith had turned her story around. Every headline about her read like a dream. From street to sky queen. Homeless girl who fixed a billionaire's jet. Leads Africa's largest maintenance branch. But success has a way of breeding enemies. And in the shadows, bitterness festered. From the day she stepped into the Lagos branch, Mr. Adewale, the regional director, had never truly accepted her. Adewale was 50, tall, dark-skinned and heavy-set, with a deep voice and a face that carried both authority and arrogance. He had worked at JJ Jet for 15 long years, climbing his way from mechanic to director. In his mind, leadership of the Lagos branch should have been his crown, his destiny. And now here was Olivia, young, barely in her 20s, once a homeless girl, sitting in the seat he believed belonged to him. Each time he watched her give orders at meetings, each time clients praised her brilliance, each time the staff celebrated her name, his pride bled. She consults me, she respects me. Adewale would tell himself at night, staring at his mansion's chandelier. But respect is not enough. How can I, Adewale, with 15 years of sweat, work under this child? His bitterness grew into obsession. And obsession turned into a plan. One evening, Adewale sat in his office long after others had left. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "David," he said in a low voice. On the other end, David Johnson, the assistant regional manager, answered. David was younger, about 38, slim, sharply dressed, and ambitious. He had always admired Adewale, but his hunger for promotion often made him reckless. "Sir, it's late," David said cautiously. Adewale's voice hardened. "We can't let Olivia remain here. If we don't act, she'll bury us in her glory. Meet me tonight, at your mansion in Ikoyi." "The study." David hesitated only a second before replying. "Yes, sir." That night, in the dimly lit study of David's Ikoyi mansion, the two men sat across from each other. Expensive whiskey glistened in their glasses. The air was thick with tension. "This position should have been mine," Adewale said, pounding his fist on the mahogany desk. "And you, David, should be my deputy. Instead, we bow to a girl who lived on the street. It's an insult to everything we've worked for." David nodded slowly. "But what can we do? She's Andrew's daughter-in-law. She has the board's blessing." Adewale leaned closer. His eyes glittered with malice. "We take her out, not by killing her, by destroying her reputation. If the branch falls under her watch, the board will have no choice but to remove her." David swallowed. "And how do we achieve that?" Adewale smirked. "We burn it down." David's eyes widened. "Burn? The company?" "Not all," Adewale whispered. "Just enough to cause scandal. The new Challenger jet in Hangar 3 Chief Obinna Anderson's aircraft. If that plane goes up in flames, the board will scream for Olivia's head." David's hand trembled around his glass. "And security?" "Handled," Adewale said. "I spoke with the head of security, Emeka. He will order his men away. For 5 million naira. Silence is easy. They'll later claim Olivia refused to approve their allowance. That's why they abandoned their posts. It will be the perfect reason to blame her." David's jaw tightened. He could already taste the deputy's chair. He gave a slow nod. "I'm in." The two men clinked glasses, sealing the darkest pact of their lives. What they didn't know was that Andrew Jacobs had been watching Adewale from the very beginning. His decades as a billionaire CEO had taught him that enemies were never far when power shifted. From the moment he noticed the resentment in Adewale's eyes, Andrew quietly put safeguards in place. One of them was Emeka, the real head of security, not the man Adewale thought he had bribed, but Andrew's trusted ally. For months, Andrew had been secretly paying Emeka to monitor all conversations in the branch. So, when Adewale and David whispered their plot in the Ikoyi mansion, Emeka was already recording. He captured the meeting, the talk of fire, even the moment they counted the 5 million naira bribe. That night, as the city of Lagos slept, Emeka slipped into Andrew's mansion. He handed him the recording, eyes grim. "Sir, they plan to strike tomorrow, midnight. Hangar 3. Andrew listened, his face growing darker with every word. He clenched his fist. "They think they can touch Olivia. Not while I breathe." The following night, the hangar stood quiet under the moonlight. The new Challenger jet gleamed in the shadows, its silver surface glowing like a ghost. Adewale and David arrived with 2 hired men. They crept into the hangar, cans of fuel in hand. Sweat dripped down their brows as they doused the floor near the aircraft. "Light it," Adewale whispered, but before the match could strike, floodlights blazed across the hangar. Sirens wailed. Police officers stormed in, guns raised. Firefighters rushed behind them. "Freeze!" a voice thundered. Adewale and David froze in shock, the fuel cans slipping from their hands. Emeka stepped forward with Andrew at his side. "Caught you," Andrew said coldly. His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "In the act, planning to destroy the very company you claim to love." The police seized them, snapping cold handcuffs around their wrists. Moments later, headlights cut through the night. A black SUV pulled up, and Olivia stepped out. She had been called by Andrew, but didn't know what to expect. When she saw Adewale and David in handcuffs, her heart dropped. She walked up to them, her elegant gown brushing the tarmac, her face pale with shock. "So it's true, Mr. Adewale? You wanted to burn this company down just to see me removed?" Her voice trembled with pain. "How wicked can you be? I have never treated you with pride. I consult you. I seek your advice. I've respected you as a senior, and yet you plot against me." Adewale's eyes burned with bitter fire. "Do you think I will ever be happy watching you, a street girl, sit above me? 15 years I gave to this company. 15 years. And now I must answer to you. I would rather rot in jail than call you my head. Vista, in a legend of the Pursteen of most of those, in the Basta." His words sliced the night. Olivia's lips quivered, but she stood her ground. "Then so be it. But know this, Adewale, power built on pride always ends in ashes." The police dragged Adewale and David away. Their hired men followed, heads bowed in shame. The next day, headlines exploded. Top executives arrested for arson plot. Adewale and David were charged before the Lagos Federal High Court with conspiracy, arson, and breach of trust. Emeka's recordings played in open court, their voices damning them beyond denial. Video footage of them pouring fuel sealed the case. Adewale pleaded not guilty, but his pride cracked when his daughter stood in court, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, why? Didn't you teach us never to lie or do evil?" For the first time, Adewale looked away in shame. His arrogance collapsed, replaced by grief. The judge's gavel thundered. 20 years imprisonment, without option of fine. As they were led away, their wives sobbed, their children wailed. Adewale and David broke down at last, crushed under the weight of their choices. Prison life was nothing like their mansions. The tiny rusted beds, the dark, damp rooms, the tasteless food all stripped them of dignity. Every day, they stared through barred windows at the bustling Lagos skyline, their hearts heavy with regret. Meanwhile, Olivia moved forward. She strengthened her team, repaired not 1 but 2 presidential jets, and soon she was nominated for a Presidential Award of Excellence. But deep in her heart, Olivia carried a burden. Victory over enemies did not taste sweet when their wives and children wept. Letters began arriving from prison. Adewale and David begging her for forgiveness, promising they had changed. And Olivia, remembering her own second chance, began to wonder, should I do for them what Andrew once did for me? The Lagos branch of JJ Jet Maintenance, Repair, and Overhaul International hummed with life. Under Olivia's leadership, it had risen to new heights. The staff worked with renewed energy, clients praised their efficiency, and the press adored her story, the homeless girl who fixed a billionaire's jet. But late at night, when the lights dimmed in Andrew's mansion and Jerry slept beside her, Olivia sat awake, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts wandered back to the courtroom. She still heard Adewale's daughters cry, "Daddy, why did you do this?" and David's wife wailing as police dragged him away. She pressed a hand over her chest. Victory did not feel like victory. It felt heavy. One morning, a guard from Kirikiri prison delivered a brown envelope to Olivia's office. Inside were 2 handwritten letters. The first was from Adewale. His handwriting was shaky, almost unrecognizable from the bold strokes of the man she had once known. "Madam Olivia, I was blinded by pride. I thought leadership was my right because of years, but I see now it was poisoned ambition. Each day in this prison, I wake with regret. I failed my family. I betrayed the company. I betrayed myself. If only I could turn back time. Forgive me. The second was from David. Madam, prison has broken me. The noise, the smell, the shame it strips you bare. I see now what a fool I was to follow Adewale. Please, if there is any mercy in your heart, forgive me. I promise I will live the rest of my life in humility. Olivia read the letters again and again. Tears blurred her vision. She thought of the day Andrew saved her, how he had given her a chance when everyone else had laughed. Could she do the same for these men? That evening, Olivia gathered Jerry and Andrew in the living room. Baby Jonathan played on the carpet, giggling as he stacked toy blocks. The laughter of her child contrasted sharply with the weight of her heart. Papa Andrew, Olivia began softly. I received letters from Adewale and David. They beg for forgiveness. Andrew leaned back in his armchair, his face thoughtful. And what do you feel? Olivia hesitated. I feel torn. They hurt me deeply. They plotted to destroy everything we built. Yet, I can't forget the tears of their families. I can't shake the thought that maybe they deserve what I was given a second chance. Jerry shifted closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. Olivia, your kindness is your strength. But are you sure? What if they betray you again? Andrew's eyes glistened as he looked at her. Everyone deserves a second chance, my dear. You know this better than anyone. I saved you, and look at what you've become. If these men truly regret their actions, then perhaps setting them free could change them forever. Olivia's lips trembled. Then I must try. The following week, Olivia visited Kirikiri prison. The iron gates clanged open with a metallic groan, and guards led her to the visitors' corner. The air smelled of sweat and rust, a far cry from the polished hangars she commanded. When Adewale and David walked in, Olivia almost gasped. They were shadows of their former selves, lean, pale, their proud shoulders hunched. The moment their eyes met hers, both men fell to their knees. Madam Olivia, Adewale cried, his voice breaking. Forgive us. Please, forgive us. David wept openly, his hands trembling. We destroyed ourselves with envy. We see it now. You have every right to hate us. But we beg, do not let our children carry the shame of our sins. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She had expected anger, bitterness, but instead, she saw broken men. Their arrogance had been stripped away, leaving only regret. She leaned forward, her voice steady. I already forgave you. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be here today. The two men froze, staring at her as though she had spoken a miracle. But forgiveness is not enough, Olivia continued. You must change. If I fight for your release, you must promise to live as men of humility, not pride. Can you do that? Adewale pressed his forehead to the cold cement floor. By God, I will. David clasped his hands together, sobbing. I swear, madam. Never again. Olivia began the process of withdrawing the case. It was not easy. Many of the board members opposed her, arguing that Adewale and David had brought disgrace to the company. But Olivia stood firm. They were wrong, yes, she told the board. But if no one had forgiven me, I would still be homeless on the streets. They need the same chance I was given. Andrew supported her fully, his commanding presence silencing the louder critics. Jerry, though cautious, stood by her side. After months of appeals and petitions, the case was reviewed. 4 years had passed since their sentencing, and now Adewale and David stood once again in court. When the judge asked if anyone spoke for them, Olivia rose. Her gown flowed as she stepped forward, her voice carrying through the courtroom. Your lordship, she said, these men wronged me, but I forgave them. They wronged this company, but they are not beyond redemption. I stand here today, not as their victim, but as their advocate. Set them free, and let us all see what forgiveness can build. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge seemed moved. After a pause, he pronounced, having served 4 years and shown remorse, and with the victim herself pleading on their behalf, this court hereby releases Adewale and David. Gasps echoed. Adewale and David collapsed to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. 1 week later, Olivia invited Adewale and David to the Lagos branch. They arrived in plain shirts and trousers, their once proud appearances replaced by humility. The staff watched curiously as Olivia stood before them. These men once tried to tear this company apart, she said, but today they return not as enemies, but as colleagues. not as directors, but as ordinary staff. Let us show them the same mercy we hope to receive when we fail." Adewale bowed deeply, tears in his eyes. "Madam, we will never forget this grace." David nodded vigorously. "We will work harder than anyone, under your leadership, with respect." And so they did. Day by day, they proved themselves sweeping hangars, assisting mechanics, following Olivia's instructions without complaint. The arrogance that once poisoned them was gone, replaced with humility and gratitude. Months passed, and Olivia often reflected on her decision. Some called her foolish, others praised her. But whenever she saw Adewale teaching a young apprentice with patience, or David working late with sweat dripping down his brow, she knew she had done the right thing. One evening, as she sat with Andrew and Jerry in the mansion, Andrew smiled at her. "You've done what few leaders can. You turned enemies into allies. That is true leadership." Olivia's heart warmed. She thought of the long road she had walked, from despair to hope, from rags to leadership. And now she had learned the deepest lesson of all, that power meant nothing without mercy. But life has a way of testing every lesson. As the years rolled by, Olivia would face joys, sorrows, and one final heartbreak that would shape her family's destiny forever. Years swept by like the clouds above Lagos skies. Under Olivia's steady hand, JJ Jet Maintenance soared to heights no one had imagined. Contracts flowed in, foreign governments requested their expertise, and even presidential fleets trusted Olivia's leadership. But as her success grew, life at home blossomed even more. Jerry stood beside her, a faithful husband, running financial structures with sharp precision. Baby Jonathan grew into a fine young man, tall, intelligent, with the same quiet strength that once defined Andrew in his prime. By the time Jonathan turned 22, he had graduated as an aeronautical engineer. The company celebrated his return, not just as Olivia's son, but as a prodigy carrying forward the family legacy. The day Jonathan walked into the Lagos branch as an employee, Olivia's heart nearly burst with pride. He wore a crisp white shirt tucked into tailored black trousers, his lean frame tall like his father's, but his deep eyes carried Olivia's fire. "Good morning, Mum," he greeted softly but formally in front of the staff. "Good morning, Engineer Jonathan," Olivia replied with a proud smile, playing along with the formality. The staff chuckled. Pride filled the hangar. They were witnessing history, the next generation stepping into the legacy. Jonathan's colleagues quickly discovered his brilliance. He worked tirelessly, never leaning on his mother's authority. He earned respect on his own merit, solving problems that baffled senior engineers, yet always remaining humble. Often, Olivia stood from her office window, watching him work. Her mind traveled back to the girl in a tattered dress who had once begged for a chance. Now, her son was continuing the dream she thought she had lost forever. While Jonathan rose, Andrew slowly declined. Age had begun to bend his back, and his once booming voice grew softer. He walked slower, his face lined with the wrinkles of time, but his mind remained sharp, and his heart still burned with love for Olivia and her family. Every evening, he would sit in the mansion's garden, watching Jonathan play the piano or Olivia tell stories to her son. "You remind me of your grandmother," Andrew once told Olivia, his voice trembling. "The way you lead with both fire and kindness. That is rare." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Papa Andrew, you've given me everything. Your trust, your name, your family. I will never forget." Andrew smiled faintly. "And you gave me something greater. You gave me a legacy worth leaving behind." 2 years after joining the company, Jonathan met Cynthia, a young Nigerian doctor. She was 24, medium height, slim with gentle curves, light brown skin, and warm eyes that carried intelligence. Their paths crossed at a conference where JJ Jet partnered with a medical evacuation service. Cynthia's laughter drew Jonathan like a magnet. They began talking first about work, then about books, then about life. Their friendship blossomed into love. One evening, Jonathan brought her home. Olivia and Jerry welcomed her warmly, but Andrew's reaction was different. The old man's eyes sparkled as he studied her. "Ah," he said, voice raspy but steady. "This is the woman who will carry our family forward." Cynthia blushed deeply. From that day, Andrew teased Jonathan endlessly about marriage. "Don't waste time, boy," he'd say, tapping his cane. Give me great-grandchildren before I leave this world. 2 years later, Jonathan proposed to Cynthia under the Lagos night sky. She said yes, through tears. Plans for the wedding swept through both families. Invitations were sent to dignitaries, business partners, and old family friends. The mansion buzzed with excitement. Olivia busied herself with planning, Jerry handled finances, and Jonathan and Cynthia prepared for their big day. But Andrew was the most excited of all. Though his body grew frail, his eyes lit up whenever the wedding was mentioned. "This will be the last great celebration of my life," he told Olivia. "After this, I can rest in peace." Olivia refused to let him speak of death. "Papa Andrew, you'll live to see great-grandchildren dancing in this house." Andrew only smiled faintly. The night before the wedding, the mansion glowed with activity. Musicians rehearsed, decorators finalized arrangements, and chefs filled the kitchen with the aroma of spices. Jonathan knocked gently on Andrew's door. "Grandpa?" Inside, Andrew sat in his armchair, wearing a white agbada, his red cap resting on his head. His face looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. "Come in, my boy," he said softly. Jonathan entered and knelt by his chair. "I just wanted to tell you, tomorrow is the day. The arrangements are done. You'll walk with me, right?" Andrew placed a trembling hand on his grandson's shoulder. "My son, I have dreamed of this moment since the day you were born. But if tomorrow I cannot walk with you, remember my heart will still be there." "Grandpa, don't say that." "Hush," Andrew interrupted gently. "Life has seasons. Mine is ending. Yours is beginning. If I do not wake tomorrow, let not my death darken your wedding. Celebrate, my boy, for I am fulfilled." Jonathan's throat tightened, but he nodded. "I love you, Grandpa, and I love you, Jonathan, more than words can carry." That night, Andrew picked up a pen with trembling fingers and wrote a final note. His heart knew what his body already whispered, that his time had come. The following morning, Lagos stirred with excitement. Cars lined the mansion driveway, filled with guests in glittering attires. Musicians tuned their instruments, photographers arranged their gear, but inside Andrew's room, silence reigned. Jonathan entered first, ready to greet his grandfather before the ceremony. "Grandpa, today is the day." He stopped. Andrew sat still in his chair, his agbada neat, his cap perfectly placed. But his chest did not rise. "Grandpa?" Jonathan whispered, touching his arm. The hand was cold. "Grandpa," he cried, panic rising. He rushed to his parents' room. "Mum, Dad, come quickly." Olivia and Jerry ran in. Olivia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Jerry's face crumpled. On the table beside Andrew was the folded note. Olivia picked it up, her hands trembling. Together, they read, "My dearest grandson, Jonathan, I wish to walk with you on your wedding day and hold your child in my arms. But my body has grown weak. If I do not wake, bury me quietly. Do not let my death turn your wedding into mourning. Celebrate me by celebrating love. For I have lived a full life, watching Olivia rise from the ashes, watching Jerry find joy, and now watching you, Jonathan, step into your destiny. That is enough for me. Remain united. Continue to win. I leave in peace." Tears blurred their eyes. Olivia pressed the note to her heart, whispering, "Papa Andrew." As Andrew had wished, he was buried quietly that morning. Only close family and a handful of friends, including Chief Abina Anderson, stood at the graveside. The old man was laid to rest beneath a mango tree in the mansion's garden, where he had often sat watching the sunset. There were tears, heavy and bitter, but also gratitude. Andrew had lived, loved, and fulfilled his mission. That afternoon, Jonathan and Cynthia's wedding went ahead. Guests never knew the grief that hung heavy on the family. Olivia and Jerry walked their son down the aisle together, tears streaming as they held his hands. As Jonathan looked into Cynthia's eyes and said his vows, he felt his grandfather's presence, not in body, but in spirit, watching from beyond. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and joy. Yet, in one corner of the mansion garden, a fresh grave glowed quietly under the evening sun. 9 months later, Cynthia gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The boy was named Andrew, in honor of the man who had given their family everything. The girl was named Angela, after Olivia's late mother. When Olivia and Jerry carried their grandchildren for the first time, tears streamed down their cheeks. It felt as though life had come full circle. The tragedies, the triumphs, the losses, and the blessings all woven into one. Olivia looked up at the sky, whispering, "Papa Andrew, you are not gone. You live in us, in these children, and in the legacy you built." And for the first time in years, her heart felt truly at peace. The cries of newborns filled the mansion nursery, their tiny voices carrying more hope than any speech or achievement ever could. Andrew and Angela, the twins, were the living reminder that life was both fragile and eternal. They carried the names of the people who had shaped Olivia's journey, the man who gave her a second chance, and the woman whose tragic end had marked her beginnings. When Olivia cradled them in her arms, tears slipped down her cheeks. She whispered into their tiny ears, "You will never know the streets as I did. You will never sleep hungry. You will grow in love, wisdom, and honor." Beside her, Jerry stood with pride, while Jonathan and Cynthia, weary but glowing from parenthood, smiled through tears. As the years passed, the twins grew into lively children. Andrew Jr. was curious and bold, always tinkering with toy engines, while Angela was gentle, thoughtful, and full of questions about the world. Whenever they asked about their great-grandfather, Olivia told them stories of the old man who refused to give up on her. "He saw light in me when the world only saw rags," she would say, her voice breaking, but her eyes shining. She often led them to the mango tree in the mansion garden, where Andrew's grave lay. "Here rests the man who changed our lives," she whispered. "Bow your heads and say thank you." The twins, small hands joined together, would bow quietly. For Olivia, those moments were bittersweet. Andrew was gone, yet his presence lingered everywhere in the company he helped build, in the family he had knitted together, and in the love that still held them strong. Meanwhile, Adewale and David continued to work humbly in the Lagos branch. The arrogance that once poisoned their hearts had been burned away by prison, forgiveness, and grace. Adewale became known for mentoring young mechanics, teaching them patience and precision. He often told them, "Pride will destroy you faster than failure. I am living proof. Serve with humility, and success will follow. Is it not try the ranges? Is not tribe?" David took charge of training programs, pouring his energy into shaping apprentices. Whenever Olivia passed through the hangar and saw them working, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Her decision to forgive had not only restored them, it had strengthened the company. In interviews, when journalists asked her why she forgave men who tried to destroy her, she always answered the same: "Because I was once forgiven. Because mercy is the highest form of power." By the time Jonathan turned 30, he had become one of the finest aeronautical engineers in Africa. He combined his mother's brilliance with his father's steady wisdom. Under his leadership, new innovations were introduced: state-of-the-art diagnostics, AI-driven safety checks, and even drone-assisted inspections. He often told Olivia, "Mum, you fix jets with your hands. I want to fix them with technology so that fewer lives depend on human error." Olivia smiled proudly each time. She had once been the girl with grease-stained fingers, bent over an engine no one thought she could repair. Now her son was shaping the future of aviation. Time, however, never slowed. Olivia and Jerry grew older, their hair streaked with silver, their faces lined with wisdom, yet their love deepened, as did their joy in seeing their children and grandchildren thrive. The Lagos branch expanded, opening training academies that bore Olivia's name. Young women flocked to them, inspired by her story. They wanted to be engineers, leaders, and dreamers, just like the woman who once wore rags and now commanded respect across continents. At conferences, Olivia's speeches brought crowds to tears. "Never let tragedy define you," she told them. "Your greatest pain may be the soil in which your destiny grows." One evening, after a long day, Olivia sat in the garden under the mango tree. Angela, now 16, sat beside her, notebook in hand. She was writing an essay about her grandmother for school. "Grandma," Angela asked softly, "do you ever regret forgiving Adewale and David?" Olivia looked at her granddaughter's wide eyes and shook her head. "No, my child. If I had chosen revenge, I would have destroyed myself too. Forgiveness freed them, yes, but it freed me even more." Angela nodded, writing it down. "Forgiveness frees the forgiver." Olivia touched her cheek gently. "Remember that, Angela. Life will test you, but never let bitterness rule you." That night, Jerry found Olivia still sitting outside, the stars twinkling above. He wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. "You've done more than anyone could have dreamed," he whispered. You built a company, you raised a family, and you turned enemies into friends. You've lived well, Olivia. She leaned against him, tears glistening. I lived because you believed in me, because Andrew believed in me. I just pray the generations after us carry the same fire. Jerry kissed her forehead. They will. Because you planted it. Years later, when Olivia turned 70, the government honored her with the Order of the Niger, one of Nigeria's highest civilian awards. The ceremony took place at the presidential villa, where once she had stood as a girl, receiving her first national award. This time, she stood with her family beside her, Jerry by her side. Jonathan and Cynthia, holding their twins, Adewale and David, sitting humbly among the staff, tears streaming down their faces as they applauded the woman who had saved them from ruin. When Olivia took the podium, she didn't speak of engines or achievements. She spoke of grace. I was once homeless. I was once laughed at. But a man named Andrew Jacobs believed in me, and that belief changed my life. To the young ones here, remember, your background is not your destiny. To the leaders here, remember, your mercy may raise someone who will one day carry the world. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. In her final years, Olivia found peace. She spent her mornings walking through the hangars, her afternoons telling stories to her grandchildren, and her evenings under the mango tree, speaking softly to Andrew's grave. When the twins, Andrew Jr. and Angela, graduated as engineers, she wept with pride. They were the proof that her legacy would not die. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the Lagos sky orange, Olivia whispered to Jerry, "If I close my eyes tonight and don't open them tomorrow, know that I am grateful. From the streets to this mansion, from rags to honor, from despair to joy, I have lived a full circle." Jerry held her hand tightly, his own eyes wet. "We will meet again, my love, but until then, rest." When Olivia finally passed, the nation mourned, but her story continued to inspire millions. Schools taught about her resilience, young girls quoted her words, and the aviation industry hailed her as a pioneer. At her funeral, under the same mango tree where Andrew rested, her family gathered. Jonathan placed his hand on her casket, whispering, "Thank you, Mum. Because of you, I believe nothing is impossible." The twins, Andrew Jr. and Angela, stood hand in hand, promising silently to carry forward her fire. And as the wind rustled through the mango leaves, it felt as though both Andrew and Olivia whispered back, "The circle is complete. The legacy is alive."